Okay, well, let's talk about the upcoming debates. Michele Cadario is the CEO of Vanguard Strategy, a former national campaign director for the Liberals. Jordan Paquet, vice president at Blue Sky Strategy Group, was deputy campaign manager for the PEI-PC party in the last provincial campaign. And George Soule, former communications director for the NDP. Hello to all three of you.
Hello.
Michael.
So, here we have the French language debate followed by the English language debate. And I'm going to quickly go around the table. When you think about your respective leaders, talk to me about what you think is going to be their biggest challenge, either for both or for each. Michele?
Well, certainly for French, for Mr. Carney, it is the language. But I think that the expectations are pretty low right now. And he made it through to Le Monde en Parle, so it'll be interesting to see. I think that people will be looking for him to be very substantive. Just given his facility in the language, can he be as substantive in that one as in English? And then in English, I think that he's just got to not be prickly and to make sure that people are going to be coming after him, and it's a very different environment for someone who is not used to politics cut and thrust. And so I think it's really going to be about tone and attitude and just presence is going to be the most important, because he's got absolutely the substance. It's much more about how he comports himself. Okay,
Jordan, when you think about Mr. Poilievre?
Sure. So I think obviously Mr. Poilievre has tons of debating experience, many years in the House of Commons as a minister. He's used to that cut and thrust. So at this point, he's now running for Prime Minister. To be able to take that step back and look prime ministerial, act and look the part. Of course, he's still going to have to take some swings at Mark Carney and try and knock him off his game a little bit, but still be able to step back and still deliver those clear and concise statements that the Canadians are looking to hear. We're heading into the last couple of weeks of the campaign. The Conservatives are feeling some momentum, I think, as certain polls are looking at. So to do that, to really to just put his best face on and deliver kind of things in a clear, positive, concise tone on his version.
Do you think he has more leeway in the English debate than he does in the French debate?
I think so. I mean, he certainly, he's not as known perhaps throughout Quebec as he is in the rest of English Canada. So I think there's certainly some opportunities there that he has in French to go a little bit harder, perhaps take up a little more airtime than some of the others who don't perhaps know the language as well. But it's the English one for sure that I think everyone's going to be watching.
Mm-hmm. George, what do you think about Mr. Singh?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think those two analyses were quite accurate. So, I mean, to be honest with ours too, I think the first thing that Jagmeet has to do is prove that he deserves to be on that stage, and particularly among the top three. I think that also in both languages, he's going to have to punch through a bit and be remembered and kind of, again, make his point to kind of break up this idea of this being a two-party race in this election. And I think also challenging Mr. Carney on some of his experience and reminding folks that while Mr. Carney, is the Liberal leader, he's not the same kind of Liberal leader kind of on the progressive side of things, but rather more on the right side of the center of the spectrum. So really pushing him on some of that experience, some of that, his tax havens, and really push him to show that if you elect more New Democrats, that Jagmeet will continue that work to force this Liberal government to be more progressive.
So I wonder how you prepare then for that, because when you talk about if Mr. Singh's task is to push Mr. Carney on things like tax haven, and in the past, to use your word, Michele, Mr. Carney gets prickly. Whenever he gets a topic that he doesn't want to talk about, he immediately goes to prickly, it breaks the veneer that he has. How do you prep the Liberal leader to make sure that side of him does not come out?
Well, I got to say, debate prep, I don't know what you all experience, it is miserable. Like, there is nothing worse than that. And you feel for the candidate because, you have half a dozen people in there or more picking at every single word and nuance and how you're standing, how you're positioning things, and tearing each sentence apart. And so you have to get into a rhythm. And for the first leaders debate, having been through it with Mr. Martin, there's nothing to prepare you for that. But that's what's necessary, is preparation. He has to watch video of himself when he has been those questions put to him to understand how that is not necessarily something that looks prime ministerial, and it's not what's expected of the leader. And so I think that it's just being very, very practiced, but at the same time, not over practice. You have to be loose enough to be able to have a personality, and loose enough to be able to understand what's going to be happening on the stage, and kind of take it as it comes. So, you know, for me, it's always looking at the videotape to see yourself, as miserable as that is.
Well, you know, and of the three, Mr. Carney is the one without the national experience debating in front of the camera. You know, Pierre Poilievre, not as leader, but certainly in the House of Commons, and he, you know, went through a much longer leadership process than did the Liberals in choosing Mr. Carney. How do you deal with nerves? Because I can imagine for anyone in that position, never in this national spotlight, in French up against people who speak better French than him, in English up against people who are more used to debating politically than he. How do you deal with the nerves?
Well, I actually don't think that he'll have nerves with respect to substance, right? Like that's the one thing that he has to be able to rely on, is he knows this stuff. You know, he can talk about the economy like no one else probably in the country. And so I think that that will give him a little bit of comfort on that. And he has been on the campaign trail consistently for the last 3 months. So that's also kind of helped out for sure. But I would say that, you know, for Mr. Poilievre, that is also very much a first-time debate for him. You know, Mr. Singh's been there a number of times, but that first debate is just quite something. He made it through Tout le monde en parle, as I said, which was probably the most stressful thing to do in French. And he came out okay. So I think that that will also give him a little bit of confidence going through.
Okay, so if Michele uses the word prickly that Mr. Carney has to be worried about, what word do you use to describe what Mr. Poilievre has to worry about when he's up on that stage?
Sure, you don't want to come across too much of an attack dog. You don't want to look like the opposition leader when you're running to be prime minister. And that's going to be the challenge, is bridging that gap and making it look like it. Luckily now, Mr. Poilievre has faced pretty intense debates, not at this level, but during the CPC leadership against Jean Charest, who's quite a debater himself. So I mean, at least he was able to kind of have the experience of going through that. So yeah, he's going to have to be able to kind of step back and you know, making his clear statements. And the challenge is always boiling it down. It's one thing to be able to explain the economy, you know, for 5 minutes in a lecture, but to break it down into the, you know, the 1 minute clip that you have at the 30 seconds to really get that to stick. I think that's going to be the challenge for everybody in that first particular debate.
I wonder though, because you know, in using the example of Tout le monde en parle, you know, Mr. Poilievre gets up there, and immediately the first question is about his personality and whether or not he comes off too abrasive, and is that really him? And that is in a polite sphere. In a sphere where you're up against political opponents who are going to want to draw that out of you, how do you prepare for that?
Sure, and I think he's been doing that quite a bit more. I mean, one thing, like in these practice sessions, as we were talking about, they're not fun. They can't be fun for the candidate. I've never been the candidate, but I've done, you know, the prep work before. And I mean, you really try and get under if you're doing them any favors, you really got to try and get under their skin during that session. And it can be uncomfortable, you know, when you're there pushing your own boss to try and throw them off their own message. But that's what you have to do in a prep session. They've been putting him out on much, let's say, lighter, kind of showing a more human side on some recent podcasts that have been getting some great reviews across social media as well, kind of showing that he's, you know, he is a father, he's a husband, and just kind of his upbringing as well. So I think those types of things, thinking back to it, will ground him quite a bit to at least he's been talking about those things.
Okay, so how do you then prep Mr. Singh? Because I hear what you're saying about trying to punch through and make and stake a ground that the Liberals have shifted away from under Mr. Carney. But I would think one of the hardest things to prepare him for is how to break through, have a message, and not be ignored.
Well, certainly in this particular debate, the rules are that they can go in with a sheet of paper and a pen, and that's really all they get. You know, sometimes you see people debating, flipping through like a phone book size. I'm dating myself, a phone book. A phone book. They used to put your numbers in a book they gave to everybody. And flipping through the binder for topics, and in this case, they won't have that. So in some ways, what it really is about is just remembering those few key lines. So again, there's all this. You do all this debate prep. You do the play of having all people playing all the other characters, and you do all that work. But one of the things that's done, and one of the things I've mostly spent my time on in prep, is a few lines that'll punch through. So either, and again, both the other gentlemen definitely have that kind of prickly side to them, and so trying to find a way to poke that. Some of those are there. Also, you want a good line that'll stick, you know, with people to remember on a positive side as well. Some of them are silly sometimes. Jack Layton, that's a hashtag fail. Watching like a 70-year-old man kind of stumble through saying hashtag fail in 2011 was a bit awkward for us in the room. We all kind of winced at it, but it punched through and Canadians liked it, right? So there's kind of those human moments too. It really is about having a few lines. You get through the whole debate, but hopefully you have a couple lines that really get through.
Okay, listen, I literally only have a minute, so a quick go around. Who do you think is going to have the toughest time in this debate? Michelle, start us out.
I think Poilievre. I think he's got to disregard his personality and actually try and not be the attack dog. I think that's going to be the hardest thing for him.
I think Mr. Carney, just sure he has the education and whatnot. He just doesn't have the debating experience, and we've seen him under pressure, under questioning. He gets quite angry, and that could take him down a couple points.
Okay, George?
Well, I have to agree with Michelle that Mr. Carney did extremely well on Tout le monde en parle, so I think he'll do better than people think in the French tomorrow night. Jagmeet is actually sick, had to cancel some interviews today, so he might have a tough time trying to get through if he's feeling any better tomorrow. But I think all of them have their own challenges, to be honest. So I think if Jagmeet can get through the sickness, then we'll see where it goes from there. Okay,
well, we are watching, and I'm going to note the fact that when I asked Jordan to choose a word for prickly on his own candidate, he did not. Michelle, Jordan, George, thank you very much.